I get so many emails, questions, comments from people all over the world. It's absolutely incredible. You know, and like I've mentioned, I have friends all over the world now. I go to Houston, I phone Caleb up, we hang out. You know, I said, hey, I'm coming to Houston. He was as excited as I am, and he met me, and it's always, now friends, I gotta say something before we start today's video. It's always super weird when you meet somebody that you've never met, but you talk to them on the WhatsApp all the time. Your brain goes through this thing. I'm getting more used to it now, but it's definitely strange. First time I met Buck, and I'm hearing his mouth talk, and I hear his voice, and my brain's like trying to reconcile. You've never met this guy, but you talk to him all the time. So it was the same thing with Caleb. So anyhow, I appreciate all your questions and comments. Today's video, this saw right here by jonsered 630, and yes, it is dirty. I need to blow her off. I do run this saw quite often, not as often on video as some of my other saws, but this has been one of my go-to builds, and it's not like any other build I have because, well, I'll tell you guys in a minute, but this is a saw. When I run this thing, generally people go, whoa, and then I get a flood of comments. Can you build me a saw like that? What did you do to that saw? I have one of those. I really want it to run like that.
Here's an example just from today as I'm making this. I get these all the time.
So today's video, friends, why don't we talk about exactly what did I do to this saw? Now, I built this saw 4 years ago on video. I built it, and then I blew it up, and then I built it again, and it's been good ever since. So let's talk about this saw, and I'm going to give you guys note for note, because I got it in my notebook. I built this saw a long time ago. What did I do to this saw? Because it's not a normal saw that you see ported, a 630. It's kind of an oddball. This is a 630 Super. It is a 1989. So fairly old saw. Not a lot of these kick it anymore. It has a 372 XP wrap on it. And just an absolutely butchered muffler. And it's a great saw. Now, before we talk about this saw, here's a little clip of me running it. This thing's an absolute orangutan. Don't know if I could build it again. I should try someday, but this thing is absolutely nuts. Check it out.
This is 630 Super versus heavy leaning tree. That's a maple. About 3-4 years ago I filmed this video. This is the saw here, friends. It absolutely rips. That's maple. Anyways, that gives you guys an idea. She's a runner. So you guys can see there, that's cutting hardwood, maple. And now this saw is only 66 cc's. Years ago, I did the 65 cc shootout where I took a 365 special, which is 65 cc's. I took this, which is 66. I took a 266 that's ported. That's 66 cc's. I took a Sax Dolmar 120 Super, which is 68 cc's. and I can't remember. I think I threw something else in there, and I ran them all in the same log with the same bar and chain, back to back to back, and did a cutoff. The winner, of course, was my 365, but a close second by like a hair per cut was this saw. Now, which is incredible because the 365 has a longer stroke, it has better transfers, it has a better carburetor, it has a bigger carburetor, and the list goes on, friends. The fact that I could build this to keep up with a 365 was still impresses me to this day. So, now, first thing about this saw, because again, I get asked about this all the time, compression on it. Lots, okay? This is a super high compression build, at least for what I do. It's thumpy, okay? Generally a little thumpier than I build now. This is an earlier build for me. I did this very early on. All I'm going to do, friends, I'm going to take the top cover off. Because, again, this is a saw. People want to know, what did I do to this thing? I've ported a lot of 266s, and don't confuse that with the 272 big bores that I do, because that's a totally different animal. And actually, friends, I prefer these builds. I prefer my really warm 266 builds to my 272 builds. I build a better 266. I don't know why. My 372s are good. They have more power than this, but I like these better. I don't know. It's hard to explain. They're angrier. Okay, so all I'm going to do here, I'm going to take the top cover off. This is a legit jonsered saw. It has a fine thread jonsered crank on it with I'm pretty sure this has a single spring. Actually, I'm 100% sure. This has a single spring fine thread jonsered clutch on it. Okay. There's your top cover. Nothing exotic under the hood. Okay. You can look, friends. First thing, yes. The fins are broken off on this saw. Okay. This has broken top fins. It's a used cylinder. I built this before I had any money or any parts or anything. I built this to be a good firewood saw. So that's the first thing you're going to notice. Okay. Now, under the hood here, this is a 266 air filter. And nothing exotic here. There's no air horn or anything crazy. You see guys doing all kinds of stuff. No, this is just a regular saw that you can build with parts that are readily available. Okay, nothing exotic under here. This has the factory 630 Super carb. Now, the 630 Supers got the bigger carbs before the 266 did. Okay, so this is a large carb. I can't remember what the part number is on it. It's an HS. I think it's a 224. Let's put the light on for you guys here. There you go. HS 225A, and it is a legit jonsered carb. And the way you know, when you pull the choke, okay, there's another cam right here. Hope you guys can see that. When you pull the trigger, the cam lets go and lets the choke off, okay? Or lets the high idle off. Listen, okay? It is a legit jonsered carb, okay? There's nothing done to this carburetor. There's no jets drilled or, you know, opening up with the Venturi. This is a stock carburetor, okay? So I want you guys just to see what's going on with this saw, and then we'll carry on. I'm just going to loosely put this back on because I like to keep my videos as short as possible, but I like to get my point across and show you guys in detail what's going on. Okay, so now this cylinder is an early 266 cylinder. It is a ZN, what is it? It's a ZN 5011, which is the early 266 cylinder. ZN 5013 is the late model. So this is an early, like a 266 SE cylinder. It is 50 millimeter. Okay, it's not a 52 mil. There's no 272 top end on this. Okay, that is a stock muffler that I've opened both sides. Okay, this thing really needs to breathe. This is a saw that probably I should pipe. I don't know why I haven't. Probably just time. Okay, so there you guys go. It is a 266 SE top end. Of course, stock. This saw was 48 mil top end. It's a 266 SE top end. And a stock jonsered 630 carb. Okay, let's go into my book and I'll read out the specs and you guys can look at my book. The notes are old and stained, but it'll get the job done. Okay, I got my notes here, and again, I want to share info with you guys. And like I said, every time I run this saw, I get a lot of comments, which just feels good, right? I built this with nothing. There's no money in this saw. It was just, I built it with what I had available at the time and went from there. This is just good old redneck ingenuity. Now, friends, if you want to duplicate this build, first thing I'm going to say, make sure you are good at sharpening. This chain has to be sharp on this saw. You know what? At the end, I'll give you guys the cons of this build because it's not all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Now, first thing I will say though, if you want to do this build, you need a lathe. If you don't have a lathe, you can't copy this build. And like I mentioned, this thing's heavy compression, but it screams, so that can kind of tell you guys what I did to it. Okay, so this is a jonsered 630 Super, which normally would be a 60cc saw. We increased the bore size to 50 millimeter, which makes it a 66cc saw. So again, I wrote these notes a long time ago. 266 SE top end. So I gave you guys the part number for that, which will be on the left side transfer behind the flywheel. A lot of times you can't see it without the flywheel being removed, but it's a ZN 5011 cylinder. Early 266. Those have smaller transfers, smaller exhaust, less intake timing. They don't scream. They're more of a grunt cylinder out of the box. Good running motor. Really good cylinder to port if you can get your hands on one. Now, first thing I wrote down here, it's just a no-name piston. Could be a white box piston. I probably wouldn't use that now, but hey, it's been running for a long time, so with no issues. So that goes to show you, sometimes you get lucky. First thing it says, I cut 48 thousandths off the base. Okay, so I got 48 thousandths off the base of the cylinder. So I lowered the cylinder down quite a bit. Okay. Then it says I also cut a 40 thousandths pop-up on the piston. So this thing has a pretty generously sized pop-up. If you go back in my 200 series playlist, there is a video of me assembling the saw. If you want to see the piston, I show it on there. Back in the old days when I didn't even have a camera mount. Those of you that are new around here, you might want to go and check that out. It's kind of fun. Trip down memory lane. Okay, so 48 thou I cut off the base. I then cut a 40 thou pop-up. I measured my squish with no gasket in this saw at 18 thousandths. Okay, so that's 18 thousandths assembled. I think it's closer to 17. I have measured it again. Squish is ragged edge of sanity. I wouldn't go any less than that on this saw because I might tap the top of the piston. Okay, what you guys want to hear is the timing numbers. My intake timing, 80 degrees. 80 degrees before top dead center, and it closes at 80 degrees after. My total intake timing is 160 degrees on this saw. Way longer than I would use now. And I'm going to talk about this at the end. Okay, so 160 degrees total intake timing. It opens at 80, however you guys measure it. I do it both ways. And again, I did a video on that, on why I do that, because it does have to do with whether your cylinder's centered or not. Okay, my exhaust. Exhaust opens at, and again, this is a stupid number, 97 after top dead center. 97 degrees, and this thing will pull a long bar in hardwood. Okay, most times a saw like this, you'd open at like 100, 102. I chose to go 97. I built this saw early on, and I wanted to see how far I could push it. Okay, 97 after top dead center. My transfers open at 121 after top dead center, which is about where they open stock. Okay, so that leaves me 24 degrees of blowdown. Okay, so again, I cut 48 thousandths off the base. This is a 40 thou tapered pop-up. Squish is 18 thousandths with no gasket. Intake 80 degrees or 160. Exhaust 97. Transfers 121 or 24 degrees of blowdown. Okay, now there you guys go. That's what's in this saw. Buy yourself a regular piston. Measure your squish, drop your cylinder, between 40 and 50 thousandths, and then cut a pop-up to suit what you want to do. Basically what I did with this, friends, I cut a pop-up to make the squish where I wanted it. And I remember doing this. I cut the pop-up once, and then I bolted the saw together to measure the squish, and the piston was hitting. So I did like another, if the piston was hitting, I knew if I took another 15 thou off, I wouldn't overcut it. Did that, measured it again. I think I ended up at about 10,000 squish on this saw, and then measured it a couple times, and then did my final cut, polished it, sanded it, did all that stuff. So, 97. I don't know if I would go there again, friends. 97 typically is way too high on a saw this size. It's too high on most saws. This one, for whatever reason, runs good. Now, I will say there is upper transfer work on this saw. The upper transfers are widened and pitched up. Okay, they stock through like this. I did this and then like that. Okay, so they're pitched up and angled up, and they hit a little bit higher over top of the intake. Again, that should help me make more power at higher RPM. My intake timing's 80. Now, here's where I want to say, friends, this build, it is an absolute monster on the pipe. When you have the trigger pinned, it cuts. But the problem with the 80 intake is this saw is hard to tune, and it's not the best idler. In fact, this saw has a modified clutch so that I can turn the idle up. This saw idles about 600, 700 RPM faster than a normal build. Now, the way I did that, I pulled the spring out of the clutch and I shortened it. I cut one loop off of it and made a new end and put it back together. Not a fun job, but well worth it because this saw idles now. This saw will load up when it's in the kerf. I typically don't fall with this saw, but I will buck with it. It's a great bucking saw. I don't like to fall with it because if I'm banging wedges, often I'll leave my saw in the kerf, like a lot of us do. That way it's there, ready to go. If you start banging wedges and the tree wants to go over, if you need to slice that hinge, your saw's there. The problem is with this saw, when it's over on the side of the kerf, sometimes it'll load up and it'll die. Also, high compression and a high exhaust roof. This saw gets really hot. Two problems with that. Number one, I usually have to tune it twice in a session, meaning I tune it once. After I do a bunch of bucking with it, I have to tune it a second time because it gets too hot. Now, I'm also missing a couple of fins on the top, which doesn't help. But with all that compression and the high exhaust roof, this saw tends to get really hot. So, it's a saw that you have to carry one of these with you and be prepared to use it. Fuel economy, it's not the worst saw, but yeah, it's like a 15-minute runtime kind of saw. Maybe 20 minutes, that's it. That's all you're getting out of it. And the other thing is, if you're cutting on a hot day, you have to idle the saw or it won't restart. It gets heat soaked because, again, it's so hot. So, saws like this look great on video. They're a ton of fun to run, but just be aware, friends. Guys like me, you see guys like me building stuff on YouTube. A lot of the stuff that we build, not all of it, but some of the stuff we build is for fun. It's not the best in a work environment. It's great for cutting cookies. It's great for showing off on the YouTubes if you're so inclined, but they're not the easiest saws to live with. Anyhow, friends, there you guys go. That is everything that is in this saw. 266 top end, an early one, a random 50 millimeter piston, probably with a cast iron ring.
stock 630 super carburetor, all that stuff stock ignition. There's no timing advance on this saw. Okay, and then machine work, 48 thou dropped, 40 thou pop up, 18 thou squish, 98 exhaust, 121 transfer, and 80 degree or 160 degree total opening timing. That's it. There you guys go. If you have any more questions, or if you're curious about any other saws that you've seen me build on this channel, a lot of my earlier saws I didn't film what I was doing, and I guess that's just what I was doing then. You know, as I got better at filming and better at getting my thoughts out on camera, because again, friends, I don't script any of this stuff. I'll literally just come out here and film. Like right now, I just read a comment. What did you do to that saw? But there you go. There's a video. And as I got better at filming and that, I started putting more info. As my internet got better, because remember, friends, the first year and a half I ran this saw, I did it on a cellular network. I didn't have access to high-speed internet, which means I had to keep my videos really short because I couldn't upload them. So, and of course, as you learn to edit, you can kind of mesh things together and get your thoughts out. So, anyhow, friends, if you have any questions about any of my other builds, give me a shout, leave a comment below, and we can do this video many more times because, again, it's all in the book. Take notes and experiment and write down as many things as you can, because believe me, the weeks turn into years and the years turn into decades, and it's like, next thing you know, you've been porting for 10 years and you can't remember what you did to that saw 8 years ago that ran good. So even if you still have the saw, if you don't have to retime it or take it apart to look, that's time saved. So always better to have a notebook, in my opinion. Anyhow, friends, thanks for watching. Take her easy. Stay tuned. We're going to be porting an 026. We got to build the bottom end, reseal it, gasket seals, redo the carburetor, and all that kind of good stuff. And then we can time it and port it based on what you guys decide we're doing. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy. Later.